There's something incomplete about life, especially in our 20s, that I can't explain properly. We envision these so called golden years as a time for clarity, where everything from careers and relationships to our very sense of self will finally start to make sense. And yet, for so many of us, it feels more like a collection of unfinished half measures. The steps we take often leave us feeling insecure, the choices seem temporary at best, and the people in our lives, they come and they go like the tide. It's not quite failure, at least I wouldn't call it that, but much more like a drawn out state of waiting where nothing feels yet defined and everything is still in flux. This space, this in between, is where many of us find ourselves in. It is chaotic, it is incomplete, and it is totally out of rhythm. We run and we stumble and we dance through our days, feeling very far from the protagonists we always imagined that we would be. We ask ourselves, what does it mean to build a life when nothing feels certain? How can we balance our ambitions and our failures? And who are we really when the roles we play begin to shift? Until we realize that we're all just regular people trying to make sense of things. Before I go fully into the video, I want to put out a short reminder that I will be spoiling some scenes of the following movies, so please be sure to check these out before watching the video. Or don't, you do you, I won't judge. Alright, for anyone who's still here, let's get into it. As time moves on, as we become older, more reflective perhaps, and a little wiser with experience, we realize something fundamentally important. Life is not about arriving somewhere. It's about the beauty and also the frustration of being in motion. It's about the journey, the twists and the turns, the countless moments of doubt, and the small victories we celebrate along the way. Every step forward and every stumble back is a part of a larger rhythm, a dance that is uniquely our own. We come to see that there is no perfect destination, no ultimate answer waiting for us. Meaning is in the movement itself. It's in the connections we make, it's in the ways we adapt, and it's in the strength we find to continue. And it is through the motion that we learn to live with uncertainty and find that strength to carry on. Frances, the protagonist of Noah Baumbach's 2012 film Frances Ha, is much like any one of us. She's a dreamer and a dancer. Someone whose love for movement expresses her search for meaning in a life that rarely feels steady. Her clumsy yet determined and endearing steps through the world kinda represent the way we all navigate uncertainty, with passion, hope, and the occasional misstep. But Frances is more than just the quirky protagonist of a coming-of-age story. She's a lens through which we can start to see the deeper questions about love, friendship, and the connections that define us. And despite its surface-level charm, Frances Ha is a film about relationships. Not only the romantic ones, mind you, but the deep and complex friendships that shape our lives. Friendships that prove how platonic relationships can be just as intense and complex as any other romantic love story. It's a testament to the deeply relational nature of identity and friendship. And it is through these connections we learn the power about true intimacy, longing, and self-discovery. About how the people we hold dear, and those we inevitably drift away from, leave everlasting marks on who we are.
Ahoy, sexy! Ahoy!
As I have previously said in one of my other videos, our personalities and our identities are never static. We as people are dynamic beings, and in the words of Simone de Beauvoir, we are always in the process of becoming. We are constantly shaped by the roles we take on and the expectations placed upon us. And Frances embodies this state of becoming, navigating the space between who she is and who she wants to be. We as human beings are not solitary beings, but we are shaped by the people we love, lose, and grow alongside. Frances and Sophie's friendship is the emotional core of the film, and this core is fundamentally human. Their connection shows how the power of love can shape who we are, and as life pulls us from the people we hold dear in different directions, our bonds fracture, revealing the bittersweet reality of growing up. Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex asserts that one is not born, but rather becomes a woman, implying how gender is not an innate quality, but a construct shaped by societal norms and expectations. This idea deeply resonates in Frances as she herself is caught in the push and pull of these expectations. Society pressures her to conform to markers of traditional adulthood: financial stability, a linear career path, and romantic success. Yet, Frances resists these conventions, carving out a life that feels more authentic to her, albeit messier and less secure. Her life is a patchwork of uncertainty. She drifts between apartments, she's unable to afford her own space, and she clings to an unpaid apprenticeship at a dance company. She even jokes self-deprecatingly about being undateable.
Who were you fucking last week, Francis?
I make love.
Francis, undateable.
You know what Virginia Woolf book this reminds me of?
Francis, undateable.
Benji thinks I'm undateable. It's really funny when he does it.
Undateable.
Undateable.
Me?
No, I meant me that time.
And these choices and the circumstances they create don't just show a resistance to traditional milestones, but also the dissonance between her aspirations and her reality. Frances desires to be a professional dancer, but she struggles to secure a foothold in her career. She values deep and meaningful friendships, yet faces the inevitable shifts and strains as her friends grow and change around her. In her choices, we see a conscious defiance of these societal norms, and in return, the toll this defiance takes, leaving her feeling lost and inadequate at times. De Beauvoir's assertion that women are made rather than born also calls attention to how societal expectations create a performative aspect to identity. For Frances, this performativity is palpable. She dances through her life, auditioning not only for jobs, but also for her place in the world. She performs in her friendships, playing confidant, supporter, and equal in relationships that often feel unequal. Even her self-deprecating humor I just mentioned and outward quirkiness are performances, ways to conceal her insecurities and project a sense of freedom she doesn't always feel. Yet, the film doesn't condemn Frances for her struggles, instead, it begs us, the viewers, to empathize with her. Her story illustrates the tension many women face in balancing their own ambitions and desires with the expectations imposed upon them. Frances' refusal to conform isn't a failure but an attempt to live the way she wants to. In this way, the film aligns with de Beauvoir's call for women to embrace the freedom to become in their own way, rejecting the roles and identities insisted upon them. Frances' journey may be messy, but it is undeniably hers. It's a testament to the ongoing process of self-discovery and the resilience it demands. Judith Butler's theory of performativity introduced in Gender Trouble also posits that gender, and by that extension identity as a whole, is not a fixed attribute, but a practice shaped through repetition. This framework offers a compelling way to understand Frances' actions. Frances' exaggerated awkwardness at dinner parties, impulsive decisions, and self-deprecating humor shows this internal discomfort. These performances are not superficial, they are deeply tied to her sense of self and her ongoing struggle to navigate a world that often feels out of reach. Frances' life exemplifies the performative nature of identity. Whether as a dancer, a friend, or as a dreamer, her actions reveal both the joy and the tension of crafting an identity in a world that demands clarity. One of the best examples of this performative tension is Frances' relationship with her best friend Sophie. Their bond is intense, almost romantic in its depth and exclusivity, yet it reflects a kind of performance on Frances' part. She clings to an idealized version of their friendship, one that is frozen in time and untouched by the inevitable changes that come with adulthood. Frances' longing to maintain this connection becomes another way she resists the reality of shifting roles and identities, and even as Sophie begins to move on, entering a more traditional path of career success and romantic commitment. In clinging to the past, Frances performs a version of herself that no longer fully aligns with her present reality.
It's that thing when you're with someone and you love them and they know it and they love you and you know it, but it's a party and you're both talking to other people and you're laughing and shining and you look across the room and catch each other's eyes, but not because you're possessive or it's precisely sexual, but because that is your person in this life. And it's funny.
Adrienne Rich's essay Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Existence offers a different lens for understanding this relationship, arguing that society enforces heterosexuality as the default framework for intimacy, often sidelining the depth and complexity of connections between women. If looked at from this perspective, Frances and Sophie's relationship becomes a more nuanced look at non-romantic intimacy. Frances and Sophie's connection operates outside traditional narratives of heterosexual relationships, offering an intimate and emotionally significant bond that defies simple categorization. Rich's concept of the lesbian continuum, a spectrum of women's relationships that includes all forms of deep connection beyond compulsory heterosexuality, it captures the essence of their friendship. Frances' reliance on Sophie for emotional support, their shared routines, and their private understanding shows a kind of intimacy that goes way beyond what is conventionally seen as normal, which places the importance of platonic relationships over romantic and sexual ones. However, a certain tension arises when Sophie begins to actually conform to those social expectations. She starts pursuing a career and an engagement while Frances remains in her own state of instability. This implication ultimately suggests that societal structures eventually compel women to prioritize heterosexual relationships at the expense of female friendships. Frances' struggle to preserve her bond with Sophie is by definition a more or less conscious fight against these norms. She refuses to let their connection be diminished or replaced by what others deem to be proper grown-up behavior. Relationships play a vital role in providing emotional sustenance and shaping identity, an idea central to Frances' journey. Her self-discovery is completely intertwined with her friendship with Sophie, especially as their relationship evolves. Frances' struggles echo existentialist ideas of freedom and responsibility. As she dances through life, she begins to realize that these roles are not fixed scripts handed to her, but much rather they are opportunities for reinvention. Her journey supports the idea that meaning is not discovered but created. By refusing to conform to traditional measures of success or abandon her aspirations, Frances actively shapes her identity, embracing the uncertainty and fluidity that define her life. And only through clinging to her friendship, even as it fades, Frances' story becomes more than a narrative of personal growth. It becomes a reflection on the universal human condition. Her performances, both intentional and unconscious, reflect the tension between societal expectations and individual freedom. And it's a reminder to each and every one of us that identity is, at its core, an ongoing act of creation. In Stand By Me, the bond between Gordy, Chris, Teddy, and Vern embodies the innocence of youth. The purity in their connection reminds me of the friendships I had when growing up. Those relationships that often felt immortal and never-ending, like they were the only thing that truly mattered. Watching Stand By Me always pulls me back to that space, to the time when friendships weren't about convenience, but about survival and permanence. But as life goes on, the boys go their separate ways, their lives shaped by forces outside of their control. and it reminds me of the friendships that have faded over time, not out of anger, but out of sheer distance, when someone who once knew everything about you now feels more like a stranger than anything. Love can be redefined as an evolving experience, shifting away from traditional romantic ideals to encompass the complex and ever-changing nature of human connection. Our relationships, whether they are platonic, romantic, or something in between, are at the heart of what it means to be human. They are what it means to be with friends, loved ones, and even ourselves. They become a canvas for exploring what it truly means to be with others, but also shows us who we are, and it challenges us, and sometimes it leaves us when we least expect it.
As time went on, we saw less and less of Teddy and Vern, until eventually they became just two more faces in the halls. It happens sometimes. Friends come in and out of your life like busboys in a restaurant. I heard that Vern got married out of high school, had 4 kids, and is now the forklift operator at the Arsenault lumberyard. Teddy tried several times to get into the army, but his eyes and his ear kept him out. Last I'd heard, he'd spent some time in jail and was now doing odd jobs around Castle Rock.
Philosopher Jean-Luc Nancy talks about the idea that being is always being with. This idea of interconnectedness suggests that our very existence is relational, shaped and reshaped by the presence of others. Love and connection are dynamic forces that continually transform as we grow. The boys' sense of identity isn't shaped in isolation, but through their interactions with one another. Gordy's creativity flourishes when he is being encouraged by Chris, while Chris's emotional struggles are softened by Gordy's belief in his potential. Even Teddy and Vern, with their eccentricities, contribute to this dynamic that makes the group's bond feel authentic and vital. And the film suggests that individuality and authenticity emerges from the push and pull of connection, a shared process where each person leaves a permanent mark on the others. For Gordy and Chris in particular, their friendship becomes a sanctuary from the challenges they face at home. Chris is often viewed as a troublemaker, yet he supports Gordy's talent as a writer, encouraging him to pursue his potential despite Gordy's self-doubt and family's lack of support. This dynamic illustrates the way friendships can serve as mirrors, reflecting back the best parts of ourselves that we may struggle to see. And this connection also brings us back to Rich's argument that relationships outside of conventional frameworks, such as those rooted in friendship rather than romance, hold an immense emotional significance. The depth of these close friendships encapsulates this concept of being with. Such bonds are often rooted in an intense and almost unspoken understanding forged through shared experiences and mutual vulnerability. As the group's journey unfolds, the boys do not simply confront external obstacles, but also their own internal struggles. For Gordy, the trip becomes a way to process the grief of losing his brother, as well as his feelings of invisibility within his family. Chris wrestles with the stigma of his family's reputation and his fear of becoming trapped in a cycle of failure. And only by opening up to one another, they provide a mutual foundation for healing and individual growth. Something that I really relate to, though, is how external perceptions of our relationships and friendships can affect us. Chris struggles with the stigma of his family's reputation and is thus constantly being judged and looked down upon by his teachers and the parents of his friends. Gordy's father openly disapproves of Chris, viewing him as a bad influence.
Why can't you have friends like Denny's?
Dad, they're okay.
Sure they are. A thief and 2 Phoebes.
Chris isn't a thief.
He stole the milk money at school. He's a thief in my book.
Even though Chris is one of the only people who truly believes in Gordy's potential. And this leads us to think and ask ourselves, how much do the people we surround ourselves with define how the world sees us, and by that extent, how do we see ourselves? And continuing with that thought, we have to admit to ourselves that some friendships can keep us tied to cycles of negativity. Teddy's self-destructive tendencies and unresolved trauma doesn't only wear himself down, it puts a strain on the whole group. His inability or lack of resources thereof to confront his father's abusive past and his reckless behavior reflect how some friendships, while born out of shared experiences, can become emotionally draining. And as we grow older, we have to come to terms with the fact that not all friendships are meant to last. Some, however meaningful in the moment, may ultimately prevent us from becoming the people we're striving to be. And these moments help us learn to reflect on the balance between loyalty and self-preservation. When do we hold on to friendships despite their challenges? And when do we let go? And as we navigate these decisions, we're often confronted with an even harder truth. Sometimes the friendships that mean the most to us are the ones we have to leave behind. And as life begins to take its path, one friend finding stability in career or relationships, while the other struggles to find their place, these connections may strain or shift. Relationships are shaped by moments of presence and absence, closeness and distance. This evolution is not a failure of love, but an inevitable part of growing up. Love, in all its forms, adapts and endures in the face of life's uncertainties.
Yeah, but this girl's like, beautiful. She's smart, she's fun. It's different from most of the girls I've been with.
So call her up, Romeo.
Why, so I can realize she's not that smart, that she's fucking boring? This girl's like fucking perfect right now. I don't want to ruin that.
Maybe you're perfect right now. Maybe you don't want to ruin that. But I think that's a super philosophy, Will. That way you can go through your entire life without ever having to really know anybody.
Ultimately, I think the journey towards authenticity is not marked by grand victories, but by smaller and quieter moments of self-realization. Securing a modest space to call one's own, or pursuing a creative passion, no matter how humble the outcome, can become powerful acts of self-definition. The traditional narratives of success often hinge on romantic or career triumphs. However, true fulfillment doesn't require perfection or conventional achievement. It comes from redefining success on one's own terms. In line with existentialist ideas of freedom and responsibility, finding meaning in life often involves embracing imperfection, accepting one's limitations, and taking ownership of personal choices. Fulfillment becomes less about meeting external ideals, but more about the clarity and satisfaction found in living authentically. Gus Van Sant's Good Will Hunting has this tension between untapped potential and the barriers we erect within ourselves. Will's story revolves around a conflict not out of ability, but of belief. He's a genius who can solve the most complex mathematical problems effortlessly, yet he avoids committing to anything that could push him beyond his comfort zone. This resistance stems not from arrogance, maybe a bit, but mostly from fear of failure, of vulnerability, and of stepping into a world where his brilliance could be measured and judged. His journey is not about achieving external success, but learning to accept himself, along with all his flaws. His brilliance, while impressive on the surface, becomes a source of isolation. He dismisses opportunities for growth by working in low-skill labor jobs, picking fights, and alienating those who attempt to connect with him.
I want you to come to California with me.
Are you sure about that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but how do you know?
I don't know. I just know.
Yeah, but how do you know?
I know because I feel it.
Because that's a really serious thing to say.
I know.
You could be in California next week and, you might find out something about me you don't like and, maybe you wish you hadn't said that. But, it's such a serious thing that you can't take it back. And now I'm stuck in California. Someone doesn't really want to be with me, just wish they had a take back.
What? What's the take back? I don't want to take back. I just want you to come to California with me.
These behaviors stem from a much deeper struggle, a refusal to confront the pain and trauma of his past. He chooses to hide behind his intellect, using it as both a shield and a weapon to keep people at bay. During his therapy sessions with Sean, Will is forced to confront the walls he has built around himself. In this time, Sean becomes more than just a mentor. He becomes a mirror, a friend, and ultimately something like the father Will never had. He supports Will's potential while also refusing to let him hide behind his intellect. Sean's willingness to share his own vulnerabilities allows Will to see that pain is not something to be feared, but to be accepted as part of his healing process. This friendship provides Will with the emotional foundation to reconsider what he wants out of life, showing that growth often requires leaning on others for support. Chucky represents a different kind of friendship, one rooted in unconditional loyalty, but also in hard truths. Chucky's belief in Will's abilities is matched by his frustration with Will's refusal to pursue a life beyond the limitations he has imposed on himself.
Way out of here. I want to way out of here for. I mean, I'm gonna fucking live here the rest of my life. You know, be neighbors, you know, we'll have little kids, fucking take them to Little League together up Foley Field.
Look, you're my best friend, so don't take this the wrong way. In 20 years, if you're still living here, coming over my house to watch the Patriots game, still working construction, I'll fucking kill you. That's not a threat,
What?
that's a fact. I'll fucking kill you.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Look, you got something none of us have.
Oh, come on. Why is it always this? I mean, I fucking owe it to myself to do this or that. What if I don't want to?
No. Fuck you. You don't owe it to yourself. You owe it to me. Because tomorrow I'm gonna wake up and I'll be 50. And I'll still be doing this shit. And that's all right, that's fine. I mean, you're sitting on a winning lottery ticket. You're too much of a pussy to cash it in. And that's bullshit. Because I'd do fucking anything to have what you got. So would any of these fucking guys. It'd be an insult to us if you're still here in 20 years. Hanging around here is a fucking waste of your time.
You don't know that.
I don't?
No, you don't know that.
No, I don't know that. Let me tell you what I do know. Every day I come by your house and I pick you up. And we go out, we have a few drinks and a few laughs, and it's great. You know what the best part of my day is? For about 10 seconds from when I pull up to the curb when I get to your door. Because I think maybe I'll get up there and I'll knock on the door and you won't be there. No goodbye, no see you later, no nothing. You just left. I don't know much, but I know that.
This moment encapsulates the power of friendship to both comfort and challenge. Chucky's love for Will is not passive. It insists that Will is able to rise to the occasion and become the person he is meant to be. Will's friendships with Chucky gives him with a sense of belonging and loyalty. Their friendship highlights the role of others in holding us accountable and pushing us towards growth. Will's eventual decision to leave Boston and pursue a relationship with Skylar is not framed as a grand romantic gesture, but more like a symbol of liberation. It signifies his willingness to take a risk, to embrace the uncertainty of love and the possibility of failure. This act underscores the film's central message that true freedom does not come from avoiding pain, but from confronting it, from allowing oneself to be seen and connect with others. These friendships are integral to Will's journey towards self-acceptance. Sean teaches him to face his fears, while Chucky reminds him of the opportunities he might miss by holding back. Together, they help Will see that change does not come from escaping his circumstances, but from embracing his humanity. Will's decision to leave Boston is not just a leap toward love, it is due to the relationships that have pushed him to confront his insecurities and trust in himself. Good Will Hunting is one of those films that helped me understand that success isn't about external achievements. Instead, it is much more about the importance of self-acceptance. Will's journey is not about becoming extraordinary. He already is, undeniably so. It is about embracing his humanity through the connections that ground him. We will not change if we keep trying to escape and run away from who we are. Only by learning to navigate this life we have with openness, courage, and the support of those who believe in us. Art, both as a medium and a practice, is central to the human experience. The struggles of pursuing creative expression often raises broader questions about its value in a society that prioritizes productivity over passion. The act of creating art, whether through dance, writing, painting, or in this case film, reflects a reconciliation between ambition and personal limitations. It suggests that art, like identity, is not a static or finished product, but an ongoing process, one rooted in persistence, self-discovery, and the acceptance of the imperfection. And this view of art as a vehicle for self-expression values the journey of creation over the final outcome. The aesthetic process becomes a philosophy in itself, portraying life as a collection of evolving imperfect moments rather than a polished, completed narrative. Creative struggles and triumphs become part of a larger, unfinished story, one that feels both deeply personal and universally resonant. Ultimately, the journey of self-discovery through art is symbolic of identity, connection, and the human condition. It challenges societal norms, recognizes the complexity of relationships, and redefines what it means to find success. It helps us in forging a path on our own terms and reminds us that fulfillment is not a fixed destination, but a constantly shifting and evolving process. By accepting the idea that flaws and resilience coexist, we can learn that the journey towards self-acceptance is just as meaningful as the destination itself. The relationships we build along the way, whether fleeting or enduring, are what give life its richness and sense of purpose. This is not just about the relationships we have with others, but perhaps even more importantly, the one we have with ourselves. As we stumble through failures and savor small triumphs, we are often confronted with the challenge of self-acceptance. True freedom doesn't come from external accomplishments, but from learning to embrace the ambiguity of existence. The ultimate victory isn't in achieving perfection or grand success, but in finding meaning within our own imperfections and forging our own sense of purpose. It shows the evolving nature of love, and I'm not only talking about romantic relationships, this should have been clear by now, but also the intimacy in friendship and the vulnerability in opening up to close ones. The joy these connections bring, as well as the ache of watching them change. When I think about my own friendships, I see echoes of these films. Like Francis and Sophie, I've experienced the heartbreak of growing apart from people I thought would be close forever. Like Gordy and Chris in Stand By Me, I've shared moments of unspoken understanding that linger long after the friendship itself fades. And like Will and Chucky, I've been held up by people who've believed in me even though I couldn't see my own worth. And this is where I find the most value in art and films like these. They teach us things about ourselves we may not have noticed in the first place. Relationships are as much as human as we are. They're living, breathing things that change as we do. Sometimes they fracture under the weight of time and distance, and sometimes they transform into something unrecognizable, but no less meaningful. And sometimes they end, leaving us with memories that shape us in ways we don't always realize until much later. And while the friendships of our youth may hold a certain magic, the relationships we build as we grow older are just as important. They teach us to embrace time, to find the strength in vulnerability, and to keep moving forward, even when nothing feels certain. And in the end, true friendship is not about what you can take and what you can learn from others, but also about finding out what you can give. Thank you for watching.